Hey everyone, Katie and Sergeant Steele here, and today we're back with another unit review, and this time we have the Leman Russ Punisher. What a classic vehicle, another one that I absolutely love. So let's dive right into this beast of a firing rate. So we have, with its stat line, movement 10, toughness 11, save 2 up, 13 wounds, leadership 7, 3 OC. Same as all the other Leman Russ videos. I'm not going to dive into what this thing can really do. It's got good movement, it's very resilient, and it could hold an objective if you absolutely need it to. Let's talk about its weapon options real quick. So of course you have the Punisher Gatling cannon there on the turret. You also have 2 sponsons, which can take heavy flamers, multi-meltas, and heavy bolters and plasma cannons. In the front hull mounted could be a heavy bolter or a las cannon. You can also take a heavy stubber and a hunter killer missile. So plenty of weapons you can take on this. It also has armored tracks, which are your pretty mediocre melee weapon that's available to the vehicle. So don't count on that doing a whole lot for you. But let's dive into its main weapon. What sets it apart? And that is the Punisher Gatling cannon. So that is a 24-inch range, 20 attacks. 20 attacks with this sucker. 4 ballistic skill. Alright. Strength 6, no AP, 1 damage weapon. So it doesn't have anything special. No blast, nothing like that. Strength 6, no AP, 1 damage. So right off the bat, looking at the profile, this thing wants to shoot regular infantry or potentially elites, but you're not guaranteed to get any AP out of it, right? So with elites, it's going to be less effective. Except, let's talk about what sets this unit apart. And that is its ability called Mow Down the Enemy. Each time this model makes an attack with its Punisher Gatling cannon, something to keep in mind, it's only the turret weapon, that targets an enemy unit, excluding monsters and vehicles. Alright. That attack has the devastating wounds ability. That is either in Overwatch or regular shooting, because it's each time it makes an attack with the Punisher Gatling cannon, it has devastating wounds against things that are not monsters or vehicles. Alright, so that means you want to be shooting this at infantry, at elites, or at the other kind of chaff and screeners or objective controlling units that are on the table. That's what you want to do with this. So with that, I recommend the loadout typically of heavy flamers and a heavy bolter to make sure that you can get those shots off against those units and deal the damage you want to do to them. With devastating wounds, here's something to keep in mind. That's going to trigger on a 6 to wound, and that's going to mean that your opponent cannot make a save. They could make a feel no pain, but they cannot make a save against those wounds, so they're going to automatically go through. Now with 20 attacks, that means you're going to average between 2 and 3 devastating wounds per volley of shots. Now it's an average, okay? Average doesn't mean that's what could or could not happen. You could get none, you could get 10 of them. It could be absolutely insane. And that's something you got to remember about with statistics, right? The average isn't all the probabilities of what could or could not happen. So please keep that in mind when you're using a unit like this. So with that, what's this thing want to do? How do you want to play it? Well, first, you'll want to screen it. You do not want this unit getting into a fight unless it's with a unit of 10 cultists that it can shoot its way out of, right? You don't want it getting into melee. So you want to screen it. You want to keep it nice and tucked in somewhere away from the enemy so they can't bad touch it and reduce your hits by 1. This thing's already hitting on 4s. Now, like I say every time, you probably want to do Daring Recon, give it reroll 1s, guarantee it hits, right? And you want it to drive around taking out your opponent's units that control the objectives. This thing kills infantry. This thing kills elites. And that's what it does, and does well. So you'll want it setting on a path to kill the Chaos Cultists or the Eldar infantry, the Gene Stealer called infantry, so on and so forth. Because it's going to wound them on either 2s or 3s. And then get the devastating wounds to help guarantee that a few of those models definitely don't make their saves and die. One thing you could do to buff this would be to take the Exterminator, the Auto Cannon Exterminator. It's back again. Why? because it gives you AP -1. So you could fire the Exterminator first into a target, and that would give your Leman Russ Punisher an additional AP -1, and that could make a big deal with Strength 6, because now you can wound the elites a little better and make sure you get through some of those saves. Even killing Space Marines like Intercessors, right? That AP -1 could make a big difference. So that's something good to keep in mind. Or you could do Fields of Fire stratagem, either with Creed or without Creed, and spend that CP in order to also get AP -1, because this is a unit with Squadron. You probably also want to buff it to hit, maybe not. You may have things that you may prioritize giving take aim on instead, or distributing your orders to, but that could be a way to do this. I think it does fine on its own with just like Daring Recon. Remember, Scout Sentinels, always an auto include. That's the one unit you should always have, at least 2 or 3 of those in your lists. And that's whether you're playing narrative or competitive. They're just a really great, fun unit to have. All right, so you want to try to buff your AP if it's possible and really get those wounds out there. I think it'd be really great to do, so definitely keep that in mind as a way to buff this unit. But even if you don't, the other thing to keep in mind is because this has devastating wounds, and say your opponent has had 1 or 2 models, because remember, you're only likely to get 2 to 3 devastating wounds per volley of shots, right? So if your opponent has a unit that has just stuck around on an objective and you need to clear it off, this is your unit to do it, right? They got 3 cultists left on an objective, or 2 intercessors, or 2 legionnaires that are just holding down an objective, and you gotta plank those last few wounds away. This is the unit to do it. Because get those devastating wounds in there, and as long as they don't have a feel no pain, pop. They're gone. You've finally cleared the unit. No more of your opponent rolling a 3-up, 5-up, or 6-up armor save on that unit. You have eliminated them with devastating wounds. So that's a great way to play this unit. And that's something I really strongly recommend doing. Now, how many of these would I take into a list? Probably 1. Maybe 2 at the absolute most at any point in time. Because if you go up against armies that don't have moderate to light armored infantry, right? This thing's not going to do a whole lot for you. Your opponent's going to make a lot of saves, and you would probably get more wounds through shooting lasgun fire with blocks of 20 infantry just volleying in to your opponent's elites and infantry. This is there to help like guarantee a wound with a strength 6, and then hopefully get those devastating wounds through and clear off the objectives with the last few models. This is likely not to clear whole objectives by itself. If your opponent has 10 wounds or 20 wounds on an objective, this is not likely to get the job done. They're probably going to have saves of some kind, and they're going to make some of those. And so in one volley, this is not going to clear an objective, but it can help finish the job. So I would also shoot this last or midway through your shooting phase to help take out those models. Like maybe shoot your infantry first and then the Leman Russ Punisher. That's the kind of way that I would recommend kind of using this unit on the battlefield during your games, and the way that I think would be most effective as well. With that, you could also do Overwatch if your opponent is charging you with a unit that only has 1 or 2 models left. And this is within range. You could try to get devastating wounds, but I wouldn't recommend it, because remember, Overwatch are only hitting on 6s. You get 20 shots, that means you're going to probably average 3 hits, no devastating wounds. Statistically, you might get 1, or you should get none. So just something to remember. It's not going to be super effective at that, but it's going to be better in your actual shooting phase when it's not tied up in the melee, to be able to shoot out across the battlefield and eliminate those last few models standing on and holding an objective. So it's something you do. You could even, for instance, pair this with the Leman Russ battle tank. So it's going to fire its battle cannon on units on objectives and get a whole bunch of rerolls to hit, and it's going to wound really well. And then you could bring this in to mop up anything left over. These two pair really well together that way. So that's another thing to keep in mind about a good strategy to employ when building your list and then playing that list in a game. All right, well, that's all I have for you today. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've been enjoying the other ones as well. If you have, please like and subscribe. As always, have fun wargaming, and remember, Cadius stands.